So welcome everyone to Psalms for Life, in which we explore each chapter of Psalms with inspiration and teachings from our sages, as well as Rebbe Nachman of Breslov. And we want to thank Esther Elagorovich for sponsoring the entire book of Psalms, Sefer Tehillim. It's quite an undertaking. May it be a merit for her and her family. Today's class, I would like to dedicate for a refuah shlema for Abo ben Raphael and the Miriam, and hopefully he will be okay and healed and have a refuah shlema very, very quickly. And we will begin. Okay, so Psalm 26, I didn't know it was one of my favorite Tehillim until I started really learning about it. And it's very beautiful and very powerful. The SEGULA associated with Psalm 26 is the same as last week's for Psalm 25, which is for help in difficult times, whenever we're struggling. And the truth is that each and every chapter of Psalms is good for this purpose, but some are more focused on that than others, and this is one of them. Now, the overview of this psalm is really, it really speaks to us about our own fears and character development and so on. So David HaMelech, King David, worked very hard on himself throughout his life. And he felt at a certain point that he had reached the level of the Avos, the level of the patriarchs, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. And he, through self-examination, without gaiva, without arrogance, but through this ability which all our tzaddikim have and which we should try to cultivate, he was able to look at himself objectively, to see his flaws, to see where he had transgressed, and also to see where he was holding in terms of his development. And this is what he had come to. And he asked Hashem, because he felt he had reached this very high level, to please test him for his faithfulness and for his purity. He wanted to prove that he was ready and he was appropriate and kosher to build the Beit HaMikdash, the Beis HaMikdash, Holy Temple. So he asked for tests because he had seen that all the Avos, all the patriarchs had gone through tests, Abraham especially. So what happened? Hashem sent him a test. He sent him the test of Bathsheba. And David failed the test. We know the whole story. If you've been with me doing this for a while, you will know that we explored the history of this important and really significant event in David's life. And he failed it. And he expressed tremendous remorse for this occurrence. He recognized he was in the wrong. He recognized he failed the test, but he also still felt that he was capable of building the Beis HaMikdash. Now, the Midrash tells us that 4 people were tested. These were Job, who was afflicted and who complained. Okay, so that was that aspect of his test. Abraham was afflicted and he laughed for joy. King Hezekiah in English, he was afflicted and he begged Hashem to stop his affliction. And David, who asked to be afflicted and tested because of his love for Hashem. But to ask to be tested is not necessarily the right way for most of us, if not all of us, we shouldn't ask for tests. We should look around at the tests that we've been given and deal with them one by one by one. And the truth is any occurrence in our lives, everything we hear, see, experience, is potentially something that can get us to that next level. It's a test. Okay, whatever it is, even the most minor thing, it's a test, it's a message for us. We shouldn't ask for more on top of it. Okay, we're going to begin with the first. Oh, I see a comment here. Okay, Chaya Rivka, I'm going to read your comment at the end. I see. It's a very. I'm very sorry. We'll read that comment at the end. Okay. LeDavid Shafteni Hashem Kiani Bisumi Halachti uv Hashem Batachti lo Emad. So of David, judge me Hashem, for I have walked in my perfect innocence, and in Hashem I've trusted, and I won't waver. I'll stand firm. So this is referencing what I just spoke about. David wanted Hashem to judge him directly. Now, Rebbe Nachman explains that when we engage in judgment, okay, judgment of ourselves, we're not talking about judging anyone else, God forbid, we shouldn't do that. But when we judge and evaluate ourselves, what we're really doing is aligning ourselves with Hashem. But if we don't judge ourselves and we don't align ourselves with Hashem's judgment, then Hashem sends agents to judge us, excuse me. And these agents will be in the forms of tests or afflictions, God forbid. So this is a clue to us, a hint to us, and this is from lesson 15 in Likutei Moharan for anyone who's interested in studying this lesson, one of the most powerful lessons. This is a hint and clue to us that we should be engaged in and involved in self-evaluation and self-judgment. Judgment has a pejorative connotation in English, but it's really not in the way that we're speaking about it, but really looking at ourselves, looking at the good, focusing on the positive, but also spending a certain amount of time each day engaged in looking at the negative. Now, this theme really has been the theme of this week. For some reason, it's come up in all the classes that I've been teaching this week. Yesterday in the fear class, in the morning class, if anybody's interested, it's on my YouTube channel. Also in the body and soul class yesterday, this just sort of happened. So it got me thinking about my own self, as well as how each of us can improve in this area. Now, Rebbe Nachman, like all our sages, says every one of us must do a cheshbon hanefesh. Each of us must take time each day. Many people do it at the end of the day. Some people do it in the morning and look back on the day before. Take some time each day to evaluate ourselves, especially focusing on the area of flaws and transgressions. First, we should strengthen ourselves with looking at the positive, and then we should take a good look at ourselves as much as we're able. Rebbe Nachman says to limit it for maximum 1 hour a day. We shouldn't go beyond that. We shouldn't burden ourselves to the point of causing depression or tremendous fear and so on. But we should be able to take, if not an hour a day, which can be very difficult. I myself usually most times don't spend an entire hour in this practice, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, really taking a look at where we need to improve. This releases negative judgments and afflictions from Hashemayim. This is a very mystical concept. It's a Kabbalistic concept. One day we'll discuss this lesson further. Okay. And again, you can watch the videos where I discuss it a little bit more. All right. Now we're going to move on to verse 2, base. Bechaneni Hashem v'naseni. Sarfa, or tsarufa, which is how it's pronounced. So it's spelled differently in Tehillim, which we see a lot. Chilosai v'libi. Okay, we're going to talk about why some words are written one way and some words are pronounced another way with another meaning. Okay, and we're going to talk about that as we go further along, but keep that in your mind. Okay, most Sefer Tehillim today, most Book of Psalms today, have the pronunciation that we actually say, but not all, because it's considered a book of Torah. It's holy, and we shouldn't change the original. And so very often you'll see them side by side. So this verse is referring to examination. And what we're doing in this verse is we're asking Hashem to examine us. Examine me, evaluate me, judge me, Hashem, test me. Not sending us new tests, but test me to refine my intellectual counsels, my inner intellectual evaluations of myself, and to also test my heart. So it's very interesting. Malbim says that this bechaneni, this bechina, refers to an examination. An examination is different than a nisayon, which is a test. So he gives an example. We are asking Hashem to examine us. And the example given is when we examine gold, we are analyzing it to determine its quality or its properties, okay? We're taking a look at gold to see what percentages. Is it 14 karat? Is it 18 karat, and so on. And to also see what admixtures are in there, to taking a look at this lump of gold as it is. That's a bechina. And nisayon, a test, according to Malbim, is looking to find out unknown facts. So if we were looking at gold, maybe a scientist or an alchemist would come up with a test to determine if gold had a special, unique property that we didn't know about before. So there's two ways that we ask Hashem to examine and test us. Okay, again, we don't necessarily want to be sent tests, but this is also David speaking. And he's asking Hashem to see if he has first, through the process of bechina, the purity expected of a righteous person, of a tzaddik. And second, he's asking Hashem, as we referenced in the beginning, in the overview of this whole concept of being tested, to see his own spiritual uniqueness, properties brought out of him that couldn't necessarily be discerned before. So for us, for each of us, we're saying to Hashem, examine us, Hashem. Am I living up to my potential? And then we're saying, test us. Don't send us these hard tests, but take a look as we're going through each facet of our life and see what's coming out of us uniquely in that point in time that maybe we didn't know existed within our potential. I'll give you an example. Somebody actually was discussing this with me recently. She went into a store and she had very bad service, and to the point of very abrupt rudeness and a very aggressive sales clerk. And she really wanted to lash out at this person very much and put her in her place, teach her a lesson, by the way, which is something we really shouldn't necessarily engage in. And because she and I had been learning together, and we've been working on these concepts, she said she was able, for the first time, normally she would have spoken out in an aggressive manner, not necessarily an assertive manner. She was not only able to deal with this altercation in an assertive manner, she chose to let it go. She didn't even assert herself. She just said, Hashem, this is from you. This is some kind of test you're giving me or affliction you're giving me. I accept that it's from you, and I'm not going to make a chilul, Hashem. I call attention to the fact that as a Jew, I'm going to raise my voice or be pushy or whatever. I'm going to let it go. This isn't important. And she did that. And she called me up to tell me. She was so proud and excited that she was able to do that. I've had moments in my life as well where we're able to really develop our awareness of Hashem to the point where everything seems like a test or an examination. And we yearn, we desire to rise to the occasion. Now, this is very different than someone who's facing an abusive situation, who isn't able to assert themselves. The only reason I'm bringing that up is because I'm not saying everybody at all points in time should just let things go. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying we should be able to evaluate when it's important and when it's not. Okay, we're going to go to the next verse, Gimel 3. Ki hastacha leneged einai. V'his halachti ba'amitecha. For your kindness, because your kindness or for your kindness is in front of my eyes, and I walked in your truth. So this is referring and expanding on this concept that I just mentioned, which is this idea of to always train our eyes to look for Hashem's kindnesses, to always walk in truth. And so the truth on the surface might seem like this was a rude and dishonest clerk in the store. Okay, it's definitely a strong possibility based on what she experienced. And at the same time, she was able to say, I don't know if she's in the class. Let me just see. I think she's in the class. Okay, good. She knows I'm telling this story. And also to say, I'm working on myself. What is working on ourselves? Really, in a nutshell, it's to recognize that Hashem's kindness is before our eyes. It's to always see Hashem's kindness, no matter what. You do this, you ace the test of life. It's not always easy. Certainly when we're going through difficult times, it's extremely difficult. But each of us has a potential that we can get to a certain level and even beyond in this matter. Do we see Hashem's kindness before our eyes? Okay, I'm going to continue. Okay. I hope I'm going to have time to get through. Don't think we'll get through every verse as usual, but we're going to get through more. Okay, Dalet, verse 4. Lo yeshavti im mesei shav v'im na'alamim. Na'alamim. I want you to hear that word. Lo avo. Okay. David's saying, and we're saying, I didn't sit with dishonest men, nor did I hang out or go with hypocrites. Okay. So really the word for hypocrite in this verse is hypocrites, plural, is na'alamim. And the middle three letters give us this 3-letter root, which is the ayin, the lamed, and the mem. And that root is elem. Elem means hidden. Okay, so we know a hypocrite is someone who hides, who presents one face to the world and hides the other. And it's also related to the word olam. Okay, it's also the same relationship, which means world. So what David is saying here, I'm going to go back to the beginning of it, but I really wanted to focus on the hypocrites first, is that this idea is David didn't walk with people who were dishonest. Okay, he didn't want to have that influence on him, even though he was often surrounded by them unfortunately, a lot of his ministers betrayed him and so on, faced a lot of betrayal, and even his own son in his life. People who acted one way but did another when they were hidden. Now, why are these words related? Hypocrite, hidden, and world. Many reasons, but the context of this verse, the world is filled with people who hide things, okay? The world is filled with people who hide things. And this is something that we are seeing beyond today. We are seeing people masquerading as virtuous. I'm talking about the general population. I'm not talking about us. Masquerading as virtuous, who are truly evil at the core. And as we get closer and closer to the Geula and the revelation of Mashiach in our time, please Hashem, as we get closer and closer to this, more and more of the hypocrisy is exposed. The world, the Olam, isn't concealing, isn't hidden, doesn't have that Elam factor in the way that it did. The scales are falling from our eyes. I don't know what that expression comes from, but the things are falling from our eyes, and we're able to really see that these people are out in the open. We look at it in horror, but we should be thankful. We should go back to that verse and say, my eyes see Hashem's kindness, because the evil is exposed for everyone to see. The choice is clear. Do I choose good? Do I choose evil? Do I align myself with good? Do I align myself with tremendous, tremendous darkness, the immorality and atheism and so on that Rabbi Nachman predicted 200 years ago, which he said would be a flood. And it is a flood. And he said that this flood covers the highest peaks, even in Eretz HaKodesh, even in Israel, where it didn't reach before. We see this. So although we can be somewhat fearful, certainly disgusted by all this, we should also see the kindness in it, the kindness of Hashem. Things are being revealed to us that weren't revealed before. We see people being exposed in a way that they weren't before. The more we see people being exposed, the more we only trust in Hashem. Okay, so David in the beginning, we mentioned this idea of his perfection, his shlemus, his tamimus, his simplicity, his innocence, and so on, his purity. So the key to this for David is his awareness and watchfulness. He really is and became, often through the betrayals that he faced, much more cautious about who he associated with. What is this message to us? Okay, what is this message to us? So I'm going to continue with verse 5 to discuss it a little bit. Okay. Sanesi kahal mereim ve'im rashayim lo eshev. So I hated, he's using a strong word here. I hated sanesi. Okay, it's a strong word. The congregation, the kal of the Rishayim, the community of the wicked, of the evildoers. And I didn't sit with them. I'm not going to sit with the wicked. Okay, so David developed a watchfulness to be able to discern. Now, we shouldn't go around hating on the one hand, but when somebody makes themselves an enemy of Hashem, all bets are off. We should hate them. I mean, it doesn't mean we have to sit around hating people. What it means is we should despise them to the point that we're not going to sit with them. We are not going to make nice with them. We're not going to march with them. We're not going to rally with them. We're not going to give them our vote. We're not going to give them our support. Okay, I'm not just talking politics. I'm talking in general. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example. It's an example that Okay, somebody says, but you can be civil. Okay, in certain instances, yeah, of course. We shouldn't necessarily be aggressive. It's all from Hashem. Absolutely, we must make a Kiddush Hashem, of course. So this idea is, David was civil. Okay, he was always civil. He always also gave people a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance. Okay, so I'm going to give you an example of this. This is an example of someone, and this may be very far from our experience, but I think it's very important. An example of someone in recovery from addiction. Okay, when someone is in recovery from addiction, they are developing their moral character. They're working on themselves. Okay, you must have some familiarity with the 12-step program. Most people have heard of it. Many people have heard things about it. So this idea is that step by step, somebody's developing their character. Okay. One of the things about someone in recovery from addiction is they can't possibly hang out with the same people in the same places and remain sober and remain free from addiction. Why? Why can't they remain fine and just be with their old friends? Okay. Not making even a moral judgment here. Why couldn't that be possible? Maybe they could influence their own friends. It's because each of us has to understand how much our peers influence us. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that there aren't times where we can't influence our peers, but each of us has to go back to the beginning of this class, has to do a self-evaluation process where we understand how we're holding, how strong we are, and where we have our weaknesses. This can only be done through making a cheshbon hanefesh, getting to know yourself. Now, Rebbe Nachman encourages us to do this in his Hitbodedus and Hitbodedut, okay, personal prayer. You can also do this, I would say, additionally by journaling, by writing about this, and so on. There are ways to get to know yourself, your strengths and your weaknesses. There are also, sometimes we listen to that inner voice and it steers us off course, but it's very good to listen to that inner voice if we are with a group or with people who maybe are pursuing an immoral agenda, an agenda against Torah, against Hashem, against spiritual growth and development, whatever that may be. People who are actively pursuing that. Okay, there's also parv people as well. We all fit in at some point, we all fit into some category at some point. So if we come and we in a group and we start to feel uncomfortable, or after the group we don't feel so great about it, that's something to take into account. Listen to your inner voice in these circumstances, okay? Because we are all influenced by our peers. This is one of the reasons, okay? It's not a reason for the laws of kashrus. Kashrut is it's a law that really doesn't have a real reason, okay? We can't point to a logical reason for it, but if we wanted to find a logical reason in it, our sages say being kosher separates us, eating kosher separates us from people who don't eat kosher for the most part, not at all times, obviously, work situations and so on. So that separation, okay, very important social glue is to eat together, to share a meal together. So when we have that separation, because I'll talk about this, there's less chance of intermarriage, less chance of really being influenced in a negative way, okay? So if we look with a logical eye to some of our halachas, if we look with a logical eye, we can see that some of them are designed to help us develop healthy boundaries with other people, healthy boundaries for ourselves, and so on. Okay. Let's see, what time is it? Okay. There's so much good here. Let me do one more verse. Which verse shall I do? Okay, I think we'll do this one. We're going to skip. We're going to go to Zion, verse 7. Okay, Lashmiya bakol toda. Ulsaper kol niflo asecha. Okay. So so to proclaim, to announce thanksgiving with a loud voice, very loud, okay, and to tell over, to recite all niflo asecha, all your wonders, okay. So this is referring to saying Hallel, which we say out loud, the verses of praise, okay. We say it on Rosh Chodesh, we say it on holidays, and so on. And we say Hallel, these verses of praise, with very often with a ringing voice. Many shuls, many synagogues say them with a melody. Okay, it's different. Okay, if you're home, you're not davening in a shul, and it's time to say Hallel on Rosh Chodesh, for example, say it out loud with a ringing voice. And this is Hallel, and also this verse is referring to praise for all the miracles, past, present, and future. The praise for what we're living through, which many say is the war of Gog and Magog, it started, and praise for the days of Mashiach. Now, I'd like to share with you something from Reb Nosson. Reb Nosson speaks about the sage's instruction to say Hallel very loud and very joyously, okay, with tremendous joy. And when we say Hallel with joy, sometimes, by the way, there's one, I'm surrounded by shuls. I live in Borough Park, but there's one shul I like to go to sometimes, specifically when Hallel is said, at least like during a holiday, at least one time, to hear their Hallel. They say it slowly with ringing, huge, loud voices. It can take like 20 minutes, okay? I don't always get to it, but I like to. And with the joy is so important, because Reb Nosson explains this is our main task, to transform everything into joy. Though I'm not going to go into details in this beautiful lesson in Likutei Halachos, we don't have time today. But the idea is to really ring out our awareness of Hashem and everything good he's done for us with joy. And as this psalm mentions earlier, we should look, our eyes should see and look around at Hashem's kindnesses. Even the dispute with the sales clerk is a kindness. And we should be able to train ourselves over time, little by little, to discern that this is a goodness, a good thing from Hashem. And we should be able to find a way to connect, if not with all of it. There's uncomfortable situations and very difficult situations, but we should be able to find a joy in there in order to sing Hashem's praises. Okay, so that's all for today for this psalm. Now I'm going to go to comments and questions, and then what we'll do is we will read together this psalm as well as the psalms for the 23rd of Iyar, which is today. I will tell you what they are and all the segulot, all the segulas associated with those psalms as well. First, let me look at the comments. Chaya Rivka Eisenberg says, when my son was 25, 2.5 years ago, he was in a near fatal car crash. And when we were saying Psalm 26 for him, someone told me she didn't like that psalm because it asks Hashem for tests. We don't want to ask Hashem for tests. Hopefully you're right. And hopefully your son is okay now, please Hashem. And hopefully what we have here is I was able to differentiate between recognizing when we're tested and actually asking Hashem openly for tests. David was informed, whether through Ruach HaKodesh or another way, that to overtly ask for tests isn't necessarily the way to go. So you're absolutely right. Your friend was absolutely right. I hope your son has recovered now. Okay. Okay, so the other comment also, but you can be civil. So when there's real Rashayim, yeah, we have to measure what, we shouldn't be antagonistic. Let's face it, we are all in Gullus, we are in Galut, we are in exile wherever we live. And the powers that be aren't powers that align with themselves with Hashem, whether we're in Israel or whether we're in New York or in Canada or Australia, it doesn't matter. And therefore, we have to be civil, and we certainly have to be judicious and wise. And we have to daven a lot for help. And at the same time, we have to know when to draw a line about associating with people that might influence us very negatively. Unfortunately, today, it's out of control. Okay, any more questions or comments before we begin our Tehillim recital? And I will give you the segulas. Anything before I switch over? Okay, thank you. Thank you, HC. I don't know who you are, but thank you. Okay, so I am going to end the recording. Okay. Hold on one second.